5 gigahertz spectrum. It's the spectrum for the rest of us. In today's training video, we're going to talk about the 5 gigahertz spectrum and how it can help you have better Wi-Fi. 5 gigahertz spectrum. It's the spectrum for the rest of us. We've talked earlier about the 2.4 gig spectrum, and we will be talking about the 6 gig spectrum that's coming in some of the countries around the world. But today we're going to talk about 5 gigahertz and why it can help you have better Wi-Fi. First up, again, we're going to look at the ruler and compare the size, the physical size of a 2.4 gig wave to a 5 gig wave to a 6 gig wave. The wavelength is the formula you can see on the screen. We're taking the speed of light, dividing it, and coming up with the size. It's tied to frequency. And so as you see in the center here, there is a difference between 2.4 and 5 gig. 5 gig has a lot more frequencies available to us. Well, the frequencies are available in all of the different radio frequencies. It's just, can we use them in Wi-Fi? And we have a lot more spectrum in Wi-Fi. So much more that there's actually a slight difference in the size of the wave as we go from the bottom to the top. So as we change from the low end of 5 gig to the higher end, the frequency changes a little bit. The wavelength will change there as well. At the bottom here, you can see there's also a formula you can look at. If you want to come up with the formula for what is the channel, you just use the formula and say, well, we're going to take 5,000 plus 5 times the channel number. So if I'm channel 36, you multiply that times 5 and you come up with a number. Actually, I never got good at keeping those numbers and the formulas in my head. So instead I came up with a chart. And the chart allows us to see all the things that are available to us in 5 gig. We have different countries on the left. So let's get in and see what this chart tells us and drill down a little bit. Yeah, old man eyes, got to get the glasses on. So if we look over here under the frequency, we have the radio bands, and they have names: Uni 1, Uni 2, Uni 2A, 2B, 2C. There's a couple of these that we have access to and a couple that we don't. The Uni, U stands for Unlicensed National Information Infrastructure. These were frequencies set aside specifically for data, which means we're not going to be running into other things like portable phones or microwave ovens or other things in this range. But we may run into other database systems that don't use 802.11. They might use their own proprietary function. But these are available: Uni 1, Uni 2, Uni 3. And so that's the radio band itself. If we look over here, it says the past proposal, Uni 2B, was a proposal we were looking to say this would be a great chunk of spectrum for Wi-Fi. We applied, the FCC looked at it and said there's some incumbents in there, we just can't get those incumbents to move. On the other hand, Uni 2C was also had incumbents, and they were running a lot of other things in there: harbor radar, aircraft radar, Doppler radar, different things that were using these frequencies that would have made for really good Wi-Fi frequencies. And so we went to the international body and said, can we use these? And basically, well, the EU kind of led the way and said, we'd like to use this. How about if we figure out a way that we can use it nicely? We know we are not the incumbent, we are not the primary user, but I live in Utah. We don't have a lot of water. It's a big desert. So when I go down and say, can I use harbor radar frequencies? There are no harbors here, so no one's using harbor radar frequency. Can I use it? And the answer, they came back and said, okay, if we follow the DFS rules, we can use it. Now, we can have another video and talk about how the DFS rules work, but these that have the DFS on them, and it's up at the top, DFS channels up there, mean you have to follow the DFS rules if you're going to use them. If you're going to use them, great. Just make sure that they aren't being triggered a lot. So we have the Uni 2 band here. Sorry, Uni 1, Uni 2, Uni 2C, Uni 3, and then there's a proposed Uni 4. This one hasn't finished yet. We still might be able to pull it off, and it's the band that right before we move to the 6 gigahertz. There's one channel that's right over here to the right side that right now doesn't look like we'll be able to get. So we won't have a contiguous chunk. Would have been nice, but we still have to play nice with all the other neighbors. Now, if you look down here, there's a 20 megahertz channel. And for 20 megahertz channels, obviously not very wide, only 20 megahertz wide. This 20 megahertz is for OFDM. In the early days of 802.11 prime, or what I call the, classic, like classic Coke was 802.11 classic. And then it moved to B, G, etc. In the B and the classic, we used 22 megahertz wide channels for the reasons of the modulation schemes we used at the time. As we went to G and went to OFDM, we dropped them down to 20 megahertz. So we now are looking at 20 megahertz channels. In the US, we have 25 of them available. 40 megahertz channels, twice as wide, but that means a couple things. One, we can send twice as much information, which is great. As you go to 40 megahertz wide channels, they're twice as wide, meaning you can send twice as much information. They also are listening to twice as much noise. So the noise floor is twice as wide, which means our SNR drops by 3 dB as we go wider. But we go wider, we can go faster, but we now have fewer. We only have 12 of those channels to choose from. So the rule for using channel widths is use the widest channel you can until you can't. How do you know you can't? When you get co-channel interference. So I like using wide channels. At my house, I use 80 megahertz channels. Nothing wrong with that, as long as there's no neighbors also using the same 80 megahertz wide channel. If you're in a school environment, in an office environment, in a hospital environment, you probably don't have enough free space in the frequencies to use 80 megahertz channels. You're going to have co-channel interference. And so I would rather have two separate channels, each 40 wide, than 180 that has two APs on the same channel. So going narrower is better, not because we don't go faster, but because we have more control and we don't have co-channel interference. Co-channel interference is like the killer of Wi-Fi. Two APs on the same channel have the capacity of one if they see each other. So you don't get extra capacity by adding another one. So pick your channel width appropriately to wherever you are. Now, if we come down, the chart also shows FCC. It has different rules. As you go to different countries, ISED in Canada, ACMA in Australia, ETSI in the EU. I didn't have enough to put all the different countries or regions in here. One, I didn't know them all, so I did the research on these and add them to the table. But as you can see, there's different transmit powers, different things work. In the US, the yellow colored ones, 120, 124, 128, were for the Doppler radar, and we lost it for a while from the FCC, then they gave it back. So those are there. But in Canada and Australia, you still can't use them. They never gave those back. In the EU, you can see you can use them outdoor, but you have to change your scan time to a longer period if you're on those three channels. There's also another channel, 149 up here. We have to look at 149. 165 is only a 20 megahertz wide channel. There's no 40s around. So if you're doing with the 40 channel everywhere, just realize whoever hits 165 is going to be there as well. Another thing you look at is a website called clients.mikealbano.com, and you can go look up your individual clients and see in a table which of these 5 gigahertz channels your clients support. And there was times years ago where you could buy a whole lot of clients that didn't support individual ones. So channel 149 is one that some didn't support. 144, there was a period of time where clients didn't, and then we went to AC and it became a new thing and it got available. So check your client load and make sure they support the channels, and then you use those channels. As far as DFS channels go, use all of them until you can't. How do you know you can't? When you get DFS events happening regularly. If you get a rare DFS event that there's a channel change that happens, watch it and then check your logs. And if it's happening a lot, then you can pull that individual channel out of its channel plan. 5 gigahertz, look at all that space. It's kind of sad to realize we lost the Uni 2B, and as of right now, it's not even on the docket anywhere to get it back. But we have Uni 1, Uni 2, Uni 2C, Uni 3 available, lots and lots of channels to choose from. Use 5 gig. It's the frequency for the rest of us. If you have any more other questions, or you want to see more videos, training videos like this, go out to wmpros.com. We also have podcasts. We have blogs. We have all the WOPC videos. Be glad to have you be part of the community. Thank you.